Understanding the technology that powers the money is essential. Knowing the business drivers that inspire how the money is made is crucial. Bridging the gap between the mind of the technologist and the mind of the business is monumental. That is what TBF is all about. Let's start this never-ending conversation. It's time.
Oh, Namdi, I can't hear you.
I'm on mute again. All right, happy Friday. We are back with another episode of the Tech Behind FinTech. I'm not on mute now, so you can hear me. I'm really excited for today's show. I have a great guest, Alana Levine from Fintel Connect. And today we are talking about Fintech Customer Acquisition Simplified, the power of partner marketing. Very interesting topic. Our first marketing expert on the show. So this is going to be a really great conversation. Alana, how are you doing today?
So great. Thank you. I'm very excited to be here, Namdi.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. Definitely happy to have you. So before we get into Alana's bio, we're going to do some housekeeping. We are streaming live from Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitch, and we also have a stream going from Instagram. Shout out to all my Instagram folks. Now, without further ado, let me read Alana's bio and we're going to get into today's show. Alana Levine is the CRO and founding member of Fintel Connect, the leading specialist in performance marketing technology for the financial industry. She has experience across multiple niche verticals, servicing 50 plus markets worldwide, with a passion for partnerships, marketing, and business development. Alana previously held leadership roles in both SaaS technology and fintech businesses, and holds a bachelor's degree in economics and psychology and postgraduate degree in finance from McGill University. Welcome to the show, Alana.
Thank you. Excited to be here. I'm excited to be the first marketing guest. That's fun.
Yeah, so it's like, we've had obviously different people from all walks, all sides of the business, various technology conversations, but it's been so hard for us to find someone from marketing, because our goal for the show is to really hit all aspects of the fintech industry, from the operations support side to the deep technology to the business to the CEOs and so forth, and also the different the businesses within fintech, whether it's RegTech, whether it's PayTech. So we've had my teammate, she said that I think by January we would hit like around 200 episodes. So we had a lot of very interesting conversations over the last 4 years, but really, really excited for this conversation. So without further ado, let's get into it. What exactly is partner marketing?
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start, because there's so many different ways that you can define it. And I think even in our conversations with people in our space, they look at it in a different way. To us, partner marketing basically means working with third parties. And those third parties come in all shapes and sizes, but they have targeted really high intent audiences. They focus on financial services. So in the context of partner marketing and fintech, they're working with financial services products, and they promote those products, those financial services products, on typically a results basis. So it's this kind of like partnership that you create where you have banks, fintechs, credit unions, anywhere in financial services that's wanting to create distribution avenues for their products, whether it's credit cards, loans, secured cards, or credit building products, you name it. And they work with these different third parties. Most commonly, those are parties like the NerdWallet, Bankrates, Business Insiders, but they could also be other fintechs potentially. So really where there's that third party relationship that have high intent audiences where they can recommend products on a results basis. That's usually how we look at it.
So the partners don't necessarily have to be fintechs themselves.
No, not at all. Yeah. So in our context, when you're looking at marketing, really if you look at marketing in general, just to kind of level set, I guess, for everyone in the audience, we look at both brand marketing and acquisition marketing as two strategies. And in the context of fintech, it's, the goal is you want to drive growth for your fintech. And so the ways that you can do it on the acquisition side is through paid search, Google, social, email, you name it. And partner marketing is really an additional avenue by which you can do that, where you're working with partners, as I said, that come in kind of all shapes and sizes that recommend or promote your product. So some partners could be fintech to fintech. So working with, let's say, a digital bank for businesses and a business formation and tax planning platform. Great marriage because they're targeting the same audience and there's mutual value that can be created. In other contexts, it's, content sites or recommendation sites or engines like a Credit Karma that's recommending products in their engine, and they refer those their audiences or user base over to a fintech. So that's usually how we look at it.
Go about that synergy. Like, how do you go about, you're working with a fintech right now, choosing the right partners, or like, how does that process work?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of variables that go into it, but I would say the biggest things are understanding what that fintech's goal is in terms of who is the core audience and who's their ideal customer. What capacity do they have from a budget or a volume standpoint, and what does success look like to them? We back that out into a curated kind of initial mix of partners that we feel would be able to align to that goal, deliver to that goal, have the right audiences, and create that distribution. And again, sometimes it's, they're a new fintech to market and they're wanting to build some credibility for themselves. In other cases, it's, they've experimented with digital, they know what's working, they've got their messaging right, and now they're looking at scale. So depending on those goals is kind of how we look at which are the partners that may be the best fit for them to get to that end goal.
Earlier, you mentioned two types of marketing. You mentioned the acquisition side and the brand side. We just go into like the brand marketing. What does that mean to you, and how does that work?
Yeah, brand is important because it's about creating those touch points and awareness for the end consumer. I think a lot of times, especially in fintech, trust is so essential. People aren't just going to put their money or choose to take out a loan with you or engage with your product unless they really feel like they can trust it. And so brand in a lot of ways has to do with you investing and building that presence out and creating that awareness because, consumers need to touch your brand or your product, 5, 10, 15 times before they actually may decide to convert and become a customer. And so as much as everyone wants to focus on acquisition and efficiency of your funnel and getting people to actually convert and what we call bums on seats. In reality, brand is still really important because without that investment in growing your presence and leveraging different tactics and channels to create that awareness, it's really hard when you try and pull them through the funnel to that consideration and conversion stage when they may not know that you exist or they may not trust who you are.
Talking about trust and the touch points, I'm curious about this, right? You're a scrappy fintech, your marketing budget is zero. As I'm sure you come across people who say that, and then you want this ginormous brand and you want to create multiple touch points. What's a strategy that you can implement to do so?
Yeah, I think in the beginning, it's a lot of experiment and test and learn. We've had conversations with fintechs where it's exactly as you said, they have no budget. Their CPA targets are like paper thin compared to some of their larger competitors in market who have much bigger budgets. And so we often recommend testing channel and message through other digital tactics like Facebook or Instagram, where you can reach a broader audience more cost effectively, and you can experiment and start to see where the affinities are. I think a lot of times early stage fintechs don't necessarily have that ICP or ideal client audience nailed. And so it's a great way really to kind of discover and experiment. Okay, who actually is my right type of client? What does a profitable customer look like to me? And then let me double down in those areas, which is where it can start to get a little bit more expensive, but it's where you'll see a much more cost-effective return. So that's typically what we recommend.
So no, real interesting. You mentioned, and I with acronyms, audiences might not be as familiar. So you mentioned CPA. Can you just blow that out real quick?
Thank you for that, for holding me accountable. I'm sorry. Entering banking for me as well, just to level set, there are so many acronyms, and I had to do the same thing, which is like, what does that mean exactly? So CPA is to us a cost per action. Usually in the context of fintech, it's a cost per, let's say, opened account or funded account or approved credit card holder. So it's paying for a successful conversion event much deeper in the funnel. So it's usually for an acquired account. That's what we look at as CPA.
I appreciate that. So now, I want to get back to the finding that ideal customer, right? I remember years ago, I was with online exchange. I used to work for online exchange, and we had this huge open floor concept at the time. It's back when, going to the office was mandatory and not really optional remote. But, I was on the technology side, that's my background. But when I would pass the marketing team, they had they had their area. And what was really interesting that I saw, right? I saw this billboard, like he was about, I don't know, 5'11" billboards. Like it was a real size billboard of this person. That was the avatar. I think his name was Bob, and they knew what time Bob woke up, what he did for breakfast, on the way to his work, what he read, what he listened to, his day, blah, blah, blah. He gets home, what he drives. And that was their avatar. That was their ideal client, right? So they knew that. This is a well-established firm, right? Online. I mean, they had a stock, they have a ticker symbol, so they IPO, they're major, they're not a startup. But what that taught me at that time, right? I've read cases after that, obviously, but at the time, I was like, wow, it's so important to identify this ideal customer that you're going to go after. And it's not just about, how does he interact with your product? It's just like, what does this person do? Like, what are their activities? What are their hobbies? Blah, blah, blah. So you kind of understand it. And I think, and I'm going to land, but I think that also plays into, correct me if I'm wrong, what type of partners you choose, I would assume, right? Mm-hmm. But the question I have for you, based on what you said now, the scrappy fintech, they're online, they're doing these things on social media and experimenting, they haven't really found that ideal customer. What's that like? So, I always thought you need to have that already set or understand it. But when you're starting, it's so hard. People always say, okay, what's your avatar? Who's your ideal customer? You're like, people who will buy my stuff. That's my ideal customer, right? So break that down for me. Like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, this is such an important point to hit on, because I think it's what's resulted in a lot of fintechs that don't survive. They haven't quite articulated this. I think what happens is you kind of go into market because you have a real clear vision of what problem you're wanting to solve and who that audience is. And in some cases, you may put something out there and realize unintentionally you're actually solving a different problem that's even more profitable for you to solve and even more impactful for a slightly different audience. And you pivot, and you have to listen to what those signals are. So I think, starting with what your assumptions are of, what's your pièce de résistance, like what's your reason for raison d'être, as we say in Montreal, like what's your reason for existing, and what customer do you think is really going to benefit from that? So whether it's like we're launching campaigns at the moment for a fintech partner of ours that has created an investing app for young parents to be able to start investing on behalf of their children early in life. And so they've created some really interesting products that really solve that problem. Their persona is, young parents, expecting parents, parents who maybe are having their second child. So they've kind of figured out, who's usually the decision maker. It's usually the woman in the family, things like that really are guiding them. And then they have to figure out, where do these people hang out? How do they consume information? And how do I meaningfully connect with those people to help them understand what it is that we do and how we can maybe solve some of their problems? But my recommendation is, if you're really early on, you may realize that your raison d'être, your reason for being, maybe your purpose for launching this may be different than what you intended. And listen to those signals, because if you pivot quickly, you may actually hit on those arterial veins that will create the biggest growth and uplift for your business and actually create the most value for those audiences. So it's about looking at their behavior. It's about looking at how they're engaging with your product. It's collecting feedback from them. Be very proactive in the early days. And the other thing, slightly aside from that, and we're looping in the partner marketing side of things, is these third parties that we work with have such a finger on the pulse with what their audiences are looking for, what their intent is, what keywords are getting them on site, and where are they spending their time and what content. So it's helpful sometimes to pick their brain and say, hey, what's working for some of my competitors? What are the features that people seem to really care about? Do they care about, just their high yield savings rate? Do they care about the fact that the product is free for them to use, or do they not mind paying a subscription fee because they're getting value? And you can collect that information not just from your customers, but also from what you're seeing in market and from these third parties who are motivated to want to present good product in front of their traffic and their audiences. And they'll tell you straight up whether or not they think your product is going to align with the audience you think you're going after.
No, that's definitely amazing. We have a comment from the audience. Harris Inman, great session, Andy. Thank you very much. And I would also say Alana's making it great, so we have to big her up too. So thank you. Thank you very much.
It's the first marketing guest, right?
Love it. And so, because I haven't used that term in so long, PS non-resistance, and I used to say it a lot a long time ago, and I always liked that term. So, what are some of the common mistakes that a fintech can make when trying to find a partner that you see?
Yeah, I think firstly, and it depends on kind of where you are. The biggest friction point we find is that the relationship is very much, it's in the name, as a partner-based relationship. And what we're finding is a lot of times it's seen as very transactional, meaning you have a need, you're looking to target an audience, you've figured out your formula and what your CPA or cost per acquisition is. And that's your negotiation with the partner. They get their campaign live, they agree or they don't agree, and then that's that. And so I think my biggest recommendation is do not look at this as just an ad campaign or a transactional exchange where they're promoting your product, you agree on what the terms are, and then you see what happens. The most effective partnerships are ones where, and anyone who knows me knows this because I preach this from my soapbox, is they have the best insights into what their audiences want. They know what converts. So not only can you get great product guidance and insight into what's going to work and convert, but not only will they help with driving new accounts, they're also helping build credibility for your brand. You've got these trusted third parties that are endorsing your fintech product. And so what more can you do with them? How can you work with them to optimize performance? If it's not working right off the bat, don't shut it off. Ask questions, seek to understand, see what you can modify and adapt so that, you may find that just by tweaking a couple of things related to the campaign, it may start to actually perform, and then you can scale it up from there. So I'd say don't look at it as transactional, be willing to pivot and don't shut it off just because it's not working. Sometimes it's just not, and that's okay. But other times, and more often than not, it just requires a bit of more experimentation.
Concept of establishing your minimal viable product, experiment with real life examples and so forth. Can you walk me through a real world example, right, of a fintech you worked with that leveraged partner marketing to scale?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of maybe call outs I would say. I think where partner marketing has really helped fintechs that we work with scale is when their this quote unquote new kid on the block. They're a new brand people don't really know about. So the partner marketing channel has really allowed them to amplify their visibility. So kind of ticking the box of the brand piece, but also then on the acquisition side. And so they're able to launch, 30, 40, 50 partners with different campaigns. So they're creating this breadth of coverage in all of the places where people are looking for their types of products. So like Neo Financial in Canada is a client of ours where, they were starting to spend on what we call above the line marketing, which is, sides of buses and ads in the cities, on billboards, different types of kind of B-roll campaigns on YouTube and other channels. And affiliates is really that pull-through, affiliate and partner marketing is really that pull-through tactic. So really by getting this breadth and being part of that consideration set against some of the bigger players in market, they were really able to like massively grow what their acquisition costs were, and in a controlled way because it was so predictable. They were only paying for the accounts that were being opened. In another case, we had a more of an insurtech that launched in a market that hadn't yet really understood what life insurance is digitally. And so a lot of it had to do with education on why life insurance is important. At what points in your life should you be considering it? And why is it okay to trust this brand, to do it digitally? And so that education piece really allowed them to grow their profile and get a lot more life insurance leads through. And then the other example I'd use, which is a big player in market, is Chime. Chime actually serves on both sides of the equation. So a lot of Chime's growth comes from, and in their early days came through these third-party partnerships that were helping to build visibility of the brand. And then ultimately Chime, Acorns, brands like that launch their own, what we call marketplace, where then they can find other ways to monetize and create value for their audiences by providing recommendations of other financial products that complement what they have to offer. They may never build it themselves, but they can create this nice little place where people can go to shop for other types of financial products that might align with their values, in addition to, other things as well. But so I'd say those are good examples of where you can really achieve scale, and at the large end of the spectrum, as well as you're kind of just starting out needing to build some street cred in the market.
So like on the other side of it, right? If you're one of the third parties that you want to start in affiliate marketing and partner marketing, how did you get in the game? Like, do you just reach out to a fintech or reach out to a company? How does that process work?
Yeah, I mean, if you're one of the big guys, so to speak, so like the Credit Karmas, the Money Lions, the Red Ventures, Bankrates, NerdWallet, people come to you, and if you're reaching out to them and you're seeing an opportunity, it's going to be probably a lot easier. But if you're newer, I think it's about showing that you understand how to work with a financial brand. Compliance is so critical in this space. And so it's important to demonstrate not only who your audience is and what type of content you have, but that you understand the bounds of how you need to work with a particular product and in financial services. So whether you're an influencer who's, building up your profile and you see an opportunity, I'd say be willing to negotiate, understand and look at kind of where they are currently and what you've observed as opportunities for them. So try and, demonstrate your knowledge and show where you see an opportunity to create value. And that, I think that'll be enough to get at least somebody in the partnerships or advertising team to be willing to explore a conversation with you. Otherwise, obviously where we exist and where we come in is our job is to facilitate these partnerships. So in a lot of ways, we advocate for our smaller partners on behalf of them to our brands. So a lot of times the brands, want to obviously aspire to work with the really big players in the space. And it can be heavy lifting to try and get some of these longer tail partners going. And that's where we try and come in and say, you may not know that the smaller partner may not have mass volumes of traffic or audiences or followers, but they may have exactly the audience you're looking for. And so it's worthwhile entertaining the opportunity and trying it on for size, because you never know what it could result in.
So that's interesting. So it looks like, if you're a smaller third party that wants to get into the partnership marketing / affiliate marketing space, it might be a good idea, instead of going based on what you're saying, instead of going directly to the company you're interested in. You could do that too, or you can find companies like Fintel Connect and form relationships there. Let them know, like, this is what I'm doing. This is my audience. We might not have millions of visitors, but the people that watch me, like, really watch me, right? Like this small little group, and I would like to, and I believe in this, and I like this type. I would want to partner with this type of fintech that's aligned with our mission and our values and so forth.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, keep trying, I would say. We're obviously there to help. And I think the biggest thing is just be willing and open to entertain what the brand is looking to achieve too. So a lot of times, it's such a balance between wanting to support a small, let's say, creator that could be a partner that, needs the upfront fees because it's what keeps them alive and keeps them going and is going to allow them to grow, in conjunction with the brand, who's obviously wanting to and willing to invest, but also wants to make sure that they're going to see some sort of return. So I think it's setting expectations up front in those conversations about knowing where you're coming from, knowing where the brand's coming from, and then being willing to say, hey, let's try it out like this. If it doesn't work, we're willing to kind of put some more skin in the game to see how else maybe we can achieve your objective if initially it didn't work out the way that we thought. Because both sides, I think that's what I love so much about this channel, is both sides are taking a bit of risk. And that's what it needs to happen, because both sides are trying to create value for the end consumer, not to get altruistic, but it's like the creators, the publishers, the content sites, they are as valuable as the value they can create to their audiences, so that they keep them coming back and they're seen as a trusted destination. So they need to maintain that trust. And the brands obviously want to reach those audiences. So both parties come to the table saying, this is my goal. We understand this is your goal. And how do we meet in the middle so that we can both achieve what we want and create value for both businesses?
That's an interesting point that you bring up, because I thought it was less about the money up front and more about you basically eat what you kill, right? So if people click on and they follow through and convert, then you get compensated. So, okay, so I was under the wrong assumption. Is that accurate, or what?
I'd say we'd love for it to always look like that, but it's not always the case. So it's, let's say 90%, 95% of what campaigns look like, and those types of partnerships look like. There are those cases, and we start to get into that, because partner marketing to us, there's an umbrella and there's different types under that umbrella. And as soon as you get into the smaller scale creators or influencers, the model can change, because they prefer to get paid on a sponsorship or on a post basis, or commitment to create a certain amount of content for a brand. We try and encourage them to look at the long-term value. And again, it depends on the medium of the campaign. Like YouTube has actually been a type of campaign that's worked really, really well, because it educates the end consumer. And if people are watching these videos, it means they're going to spend the time doing it. It means they're pretty high intent. And a lot of times those campaigns do run on a results basis, as you described, Namdi. So yes, 95% are on that model, and that's what we try and encourage, but not always the case.
I want to get into metrics. I know that's big with marketers, metrics, what are your numbers? And, what type of metrics are you looking at to deem success, or this is working?
Yeah. The biggest one, obviously, is the getting to that point at which somebody is converted and hits that successful event. So usually that's things like, from the brand side, you're looking at click to approval rates. So from someone that clicks and sees a campaign to when they get approved, what does that look like? And that's a quality metric. Or application to approval, which means how many people are entering the funnel that actually then get approved for the product. And so that's important because a lot of times fintechs have third-party technologies, KYC, underwriting that they have to pay for every time someone comes through. So they want to make sure that they're people who are bothering to fill out an application, they're eligible and likely to get approved for the account. Cost per acquisition, which we started with. So how efficient is your acquisition cost? What channels are bringing you the right type of customers, and are you paying an efficient rate for those? And so that's a really good benchmark in the early days, is looking at, what is your effective conversion rate, approval rate, and then how much is it costing you, that cost per acquisition. And then from the publisher side, just to kind of talk about the other side of the coin, a lot of times our publishers orient around what's called an earnings per click metric, which is how much they make for every click they send off the site. And usually when I'm explaining to a brand, I'll say, the three things that a publisher or a partner will look for when promoting a financial product is how valuable or interesting the product is to their audience and how competitive it is in market. 2, how easy is it to convert? What does that funnel look like? And then 3, what is that cost per acquisition? So if your product is interesting or maybe moderately interesting, but the conversion rate and your journey and your application funnel, it sucks. Doesn't matter how much you pay them, 0 conversions times $1,000 for an account is still 0. So one of the biggest things we look for is really nailing that why, meaning like, what's the reason you exist? What's the reason someone would want to use your product, and making sure that it's a slipstream experience to open that account or download your app and become a paying member or user. Get that right, and then the efficiencies will come, because as long as the publishers are getting that a healthy earnings per click for traffic out, there's a lot more latitude and flexibility with that cost per acquisition.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that from the publisher side, right? Because I see a scenario. Sure, this happens. End user goes to the publisher site, the partner. They click on it. Well, they look at the this is interesting. Click on it, read a couple of stuff, close it, right? And you mentioned multiple touch points. Maybe they saw it somewhere else, and then another one, and maybe like 10 touch points later, they decided, you know what? I'm going to actually follow through and buy this product right now. From the first touch point, that publisher, right? Even though it could be his same audience member, they first saw it there, but they got comfortable after 10 touch points. He was one of those 10, they were one of those 10 touch points, but they're not getting fully compensated now for the conversion because it didn't happen on their site. So that's how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, it's different for every fintech. There's obviously some kind of best practices in the industry for how to approach that. More commonly, we do see what we call last click attribution, meaning the last place they've come from to then convert usually gets the credit. In other cases, you could work on like a 30-day cookie window, where if you have the ability to measure multiple attribution points and you've touched that customer at some stage during that window, you may get a portion of the credit. So there's a lot of different ways that you can approach it. I think for the most part, affiliates understand that, if a brand is working on a last click attribution model, that they're going to win some that maybe someone else should have won, or they're going to miss out on some because, somebody they might have bookmarked the product or whatever and didn't convert until later. And so therefore they don't get the credit. But I think it's just kind of the name of the game. Again, it's the questions I would say to be asking about how does your partners or your brands you're working with approach that, so that it becomes also a negotiation tactic, that if they are operating on last click, maybe it gives you a little bit more latitude to decide, to request a higher, let's say, cost per acquisition.
Makes total sense. So, let's talk about the elephant in the room, AI. How's that impacting your business? How are you leveraging it? Let's get into that.
Yeah. I mean, AI is definitely the buzzword. Actually, I went to a conference this week and they said it was bubblish. So they're feeling like it's a little bit too trendy right now, and we may see a bit of deflation in the context of like AI companies being overly valued in what they do. And everyone's shoving the word AI into their capabilities just to make their products seem sexier. But it is hugely valuable, I'd say, in so many ways in financial services in particular, as long as it's being used prudently, maybe. So it's being used in customer service to create better, efficiencies and supporting kind of the standard questions that come through from customers. It's being used in decisioning. So when you're looking at someone, filling out an application, creating more efficiencies and pulling more data and being more intelligent about being able to approve a potential customer for a product, especially in the lending space. In our context, I'd say it gets used in the content and the campaigns. A lot of times the publishers can use AI engines to help generate some of their content. I'd say not all of them really do, and a lot of times if they do, they'll disclose it. But for the most part, it creates those efficiencies when you're trying to create different iterations of campaigns or creative, to be able to pull an advertisement into an engine that can spit it out into different sizes or experiment with different messaging. So that's one way. For us, we actually have implemented it related to our compliance engine. I think what's happened is, as you're expanding out your footprint digitally with these different third parties, a lot of times banks, fintechs, and then their sponsor banks are really concerned, and their risk teams want to make sure they have oversight over what these different partners are saying about them. And so for a long time, we were actually monitoring and keeping an eye on these campaigns manually. And then we just realized it is way too much heavy lifting and it's not scalable. So we ended up building an engine in-house that would allow us to know where the campaigns are living and automate the evaluation of the content. And so the AI component that comes in is actually about teaching our engine how to interpret content on a particular page and understanding whether or not it includes the right information, that contextually it's being said correctly. So it saves our team a lot of time because we can flag if a publisher or a partner hasn't updated their interest rate, or they're talking about a promotional offer, but they're missing disclaimer language associated with that, which could become a problem with the regulators. So that's kind of where we've incorporated AI to create those efficiencies and slipstream the areas where it can be really manual and heavy lifting, but can create a real roadblock for marketing teams to scale these partnerships out if they don't have a way to do this more efficiently.
That makes total sense. I mean, let's automate that. I mean, I totally get the compliance aspect. You can't have a partner saying something that is just not true to potentially get the cost, the click-through rate to increase. What I'm curious about that. Are they given certain the rules and guidelines? How does that work? Like, what's the partner provided with so they know, okay, this is the lane that I should stay in and not cross? How does that process work?
Yeah, well, there's two things. One, when the campaigns are being created, they're given essentially what you just described, like a guidelines. It's a cheat sheet that has all of the information that they should know about the product and the brand. So it's a bit of a do's and don'ts, more like this, less like this, can be really prescriptive. Like some of our clients require an asterisk after their interest rate. And so that real prescriptive kind of stay within this box tool or reference point is then given to the partners so that they can curate or create their campaigns, and then they create mock-ups of those campaigns that come to us and then the client for review. So we want them to have complete like editorial liberty in how they describe it and they're talking about it, but that the factual information about these products and what's specifically required when they're talking about it is super well defined. It's very black and white. There's no real gray area to what can and can't be in there. And that really kind of level sets. And that goes back to the point I was saying earlier about like for you to demonstrate that you work in financial services and you know what it means to work with a fintech or a bank, really helps you get your foot in the door with these partners, because they really do. It is so important for them to hold these partners accountable, because ultimately it's their license or their sponsor bank's license at risk if they're not being prudent about how their products are being marketed.
That's good. So, let's take a second now to take a crystal ball, right? And let's look in the future. Right? So, where do you envision, like, what do you see, I don't know, 5, 10 years out with the future customer acquisition strategies? Right now, it's the partnership / affiliate marketing. What other dynamics do you see in the future? Or how do you see that evolving?
Yeah. I mean, open banking is going to have a big role to play, and the amount of information that can get shared around the customer. I think it's looking at where the end customer is spending their time and how they're interacting. I mean, at the conference we just came from, it was a room full of a bunch of bankers and executives at banks who are saying, wake up, your competition isn't a bank. It's not even a fintech. It's Walmart, it's Intuit, it's Starbucks. It's brands that have huge high intent audiences where then they can look to monetize their customers in a different way or create different value sets in a different way. And that's the landscape is like, I hate to sound cliche, but the term like every business could be a fintech is almost true in a lot of cases, because money touches every aspect of our lives. And so if there's a way to create value for your audience that involves creating greater stickiness and better emotional buy-in for your product, they're going to find ways to do it. And I think a lot of the big players who have the budget are absolutely going to be looking at it. There's a huge fear in market around Google. And I mean, the lawsuit that's out against them right now has to do with the fact that they own so much of the market and they have so much control. And it's encroaching on all of these other tactics where people aren't even going to these websites anymore. The AI engines are just spitting out the answer you're looking for when you put it in the search engine just at the top of the page. So what does that mean for partners who, used content and create, websites? Websites might not even exist anymore. And, you've got these engines that are kind of pulling information from places. And so like one of the things we've looked at is creating those databases of audiences when you're a content publisher, getting people to sign up for a newsletter and then being in their inbox and creating a new touch point for them rather than just how they usually, will go and search in Google for something. So yeah, it will look very different. Absolutely. And I mean, I don't think it's 10 years out. I think it's a year out, maybe less.
Absolutely. I love that. And then it's interesting that you mentioned that, because we all notice that now, right? You Google something, they have their own large language model that they're leveraging. So you'll see at the top, this is the answer. So, why click through? Sometimes when you do further research, you do click through, but you could only see that getting more pronounced moving forward, right? So great answers. What advice would you give a fintech startups that are looking to differentiate themselves in a crowded marketplace?
Yeah, it goes back to really kind of getting that why and that what is the real value that you create for the audience. We joke that there, in a lot of ways, like in the fintech bubble a couple of years ago, that there were a lot of Me Too products, and the ones that had the biggest budgets and the best branding were the ones that could stand out. And I think now the ones that really have their commercial models very clear, understand the pain points that they're solving, and are working hard to define who their ideal client is, are the ones that will be most effective and be able to sustain. So that's kind of what I would suggest is, if you're just starting out, really, really work on nailing that message. It's very hard when you're creating white space and it's a new product. that doesn't fit neatly in the box of, oh, I get it, you're a credit card, or oh, I get it, you're offering me a student loan, or you're offering me a new way to pay off my debt. If you're in that kind of white space, I think a big challenge is articulating and educating those audiences and what it is that you have. I mean, PR and media is a great way to do it because it starts to build that credibility and it's earned media. So that's a great place to start too. But as I said, go to these third-party publishers and partners and get their perspective on it. What do they think is going to work? Because they'll tell you right away what their audiences might have to say about it.
In conclusion, I'm gonna ask you 2 more questions. One, from this episode, what do you think are some key takeaways that fintech should remember from when it comes to partner marketing?
Yeah. I mean, I think one thing for sure, and just because we see it all the time, is it's not, don't make it transactional. It's not a set it and forget it. The partners that you may be aspiring to work with may be out of reach now. It doesn't mean you'll get to work with them in future. It just means maybe now's not the time. So open your eyes to maybe other opportunities or other fintechs that maybe align with what you have to offer. And it takes work. So don't think it's going to magically happen. But I can assure you it is worth the reward.
Outside of their expertise, but it could align. What drives you, Alana?
Yeah, it sounds cheesy, but I'd say contribution. It's really rewarding when you can see that you've really made a difference to somebody, and that to me means our team, the people that work with me, our partners in the industry. A lot of times if a client isn't a fit for us, that we can say, like, use me as a resource. Don't be shy. Ask me questions because I know it'll come back in the end. So I'd say the contribution to helping the industry evolve and to supporting people. If I have something that I can contribute, then I feel really fulfilled. And I know that, like I said, it'll come back around.
That's awesome. One of the things that we do now is we give our guests time to talk about their business, how people can find them, and now we get off the stage so our guests can have that time. So I'm going to do that for you, Alana.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I mean, if you're looking at partner marketing or you're interested in understanding what it's all about, you have questions about it, it's worked for you, it hasn't worked for you. Like I said, we're happy to be a resource. So we welcome you to check out our website, fintellconnect.com, our LinkedIn page, or you can email me or find me on LinkedIn. My name is just here, but my email is alana@fintelconnect.com. So I will see you there.
Wonderful. Guys, thank you very much for tuning in. Alana, thank you very much for your time today. Really enjoyed the show. You're a friend of the show now, so when we have questions on marketing in general when it comes to fintech, well, we're going to give you a call and see if your schedule aligns with our schedule and have you back on. So definitely thank you for joining us today. It's really insightful. I actually took some mental notes because we're launching Tech Behind FinTech.com. It's going to be primarily, everything fintech, all the new stuff. We're going to have, everything you can imagine there, plus obviously our upcoming shows, our podcasts, and so forth. So with a newsletter. So that's something the team and I have been talking about is becoming partners with some of these fintechs, because we have some space to put that on. So and I tell people, look, I started this show kind of selfishly. Like, I just wanted to talk to really interesting people in this industry, and I got a really good chance to do so. And I just hope and that the audience also took advantage of it as well. So I try to ask questions on behalf of the audience and on behalf of myself. So I really thank you for your time. It's always an honor when people like you join the show and we can really just get into it and talk shop. So on that note, join us every Friday, 12 p.m. live, where episodes of the Tech Behind FinTech. We have quite a few of upcoming guests that you do not want to miss. We will be launching a new website in a few weeks, techbehindfintech.com. We will be also at Money 2020 this year. So you'll catch us there. We have to start sending out some invites. Are you going, Alana?
Yeah, wouldn't miss it.
Oh, nice. So we're going to be doing some quick face-to-face interviews. So hopefully we can link up. And so yeah, this is our second time there. We go under the press banner. So really exciting stuff. On that note, please join us every Friday, techbehindfintech.com. We want to thank our audience for joining, all the DMs, the messages, the comments, whether you watch our show today, whether you watch it in an hour, whether you watch it in a year, whenever you watch it, we thank you. And we thank you for the messages and the support over the years. We wish everyone a happy, joyous weekend. Oh, before we leave, we have another comment. Gotta always big up our comments. Jeffrey Martin. My man Jeff, he just celebrated a birthday, so happy birthday to you. He's been watching this show for years. I mean, and it's like sometimes it's not about having a million guests, it's about having those that are just locked in. So really appreciate you, Jeff. Really appreciate you, man. So on that note, we will be taking off. Have a spectacular weekend. Enjoy your weekend. I know you're having some fun this weekend, so definitely enjoy your time with your family. And that is it, folks. Take care.
Thank you so much. This was fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Understanding the technology that powers the money is essential. Knowing the business drivers that inspire how the money is made is crucial. Bridging the gap between the mind of the technologist and the mind of the business is monumental. That is what TBF is all about. Let's start this never-ending conversation. It's time.